Okay, so this is my response video to Cosplay Open Forum, episode 4, in which they talk about racism. So, first of all, I would like to start out by saying that I had high hopes for this episode. I had hopes for this panel. This is actually my first time actually seeing any of the episodes, but I got a whiff of it because I followed Yaya Han on Facebook, and I think she probably posted a link to it or something like that. But I found it, caught hold, and I'm like, wow, this would be a great opportunity for discussion. Well, needless to say, I was kind of disappointed. Race is a very complicated topic. It's very complicated because people feel like they have a basic understanding of what race is and what racism is, but very few are able to articulate it in an educated manner. So I guess we're going to have a starting point. This video is going to be a lot about me talking about what race is, and I would like to say that I'm not some expert on race. I don't think I'm an expert on race, but I have spent a lot of time, I've invested a lot of time in researching race politics, specifically in the US, because I am from the US, and it is not my place to talk about race politics anywhere else. However, a lot of things I will be addressing is applicable no matter where you are. So, let's get started. Race, to be clear, is a social construct. Race is what people identify you to be, and in return what you identify as. So for instance, people identify me as black. I also identify as black, coincidentally. My mother, however, she is also black. And we'll also be talking about ethnicity. She is ethnically Haitian, as am I. She is also Chinese. And the gene pool got kind of wonky and skipped her sisters and brother and just like smack dab hit her. So while she doesn't look Asian, she actually looks very white. She is what we call white passing, although she herself does not try to pass off as white. And therefore people will racially identify her as white. Here's where race starts getting complicated because I'm about to branch off a little bit. There's also something called privilege, and privilege are things attributed to you based on what you are, and this is given to you from the moment you're born, and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be aware of. It's something to be aware of, that meritocracy is false. There's things that you get because you are straight, white, cisgendered, meaning you're not trans. I'm cisgendered, so I get cis privilege. Religion, age, there's something called ageism. Older people are less likely to be higher than younger people. Ableism. If you're abled, then you get abled privilege, but the two main privileges, of course, would be your race and your gender. And also your sex. And sex and gender are not to be mixed up. But this is not about this. This is not about race, sex and gender. This is about race. So back to race. Race is a social construct. It is what people perceive you to be, and it is what you identify as. And now we get into ethnicity, which is more specifically what you actually are. So my example is I am racially black, ethnically Haitian, and Chinese. For example, we have race, and Asian is a race. Japanese is not necessarily a race, so much it is a nationality, but Asian is the race. It is a broad term. White is a race. Black is a race, and so on and so forth. But if you were to tell someone your ethnicity, you will tell them specifically what you are. So black, you are African American, you are African, you are Jamaican. Those are ethnicities. Asian, you are Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Philippine, so on and so forth. Usually races are broad spectrum. I know we have races that are a little more specific, like East Asian, you know, South Asian, stuff like that. But I hope you guys get the gist of it. Alright, so some of the things I was hoping to be addressed by the panel, and one of my biggest critiques is that people of color, which somebody told me is very vague. People of color basically means if you're not white, you are a person of color. POC, people of color, is used to describe anyone who is not white. So, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Darn. Oh, okay. So, one of my biggest critiques is that when you talk about race, you need to be educated. You need to take the time and research it. It is not enough for you to simply go off. And it doesn't matter what race you are, because there are plenty of people of color who say ignorant and problematic racist things. It is very important to do your education, and I was really hoping the panel that touched on this subject educated themselves properly, because this is really important. I personally do not know who the panel was, except for one, Johnny. I've seen Johnny before, actually, so I recognized his cosplay. I'm a novice cosplayer, by the way. I have cosplayed once. I cosplayed as Barrioth Girl from Monster Hunter. But I have been following cosplay and always been fascinated by it, you know, for like forever. I wish I could get to the same caliber as Yaya, you know, like something like that. Like, I just think that's amazing. But that's besides the point. It is not enough to be a person of color and talk about race, because your experiences are one thing. To be able to articulate it and articulate it well is another. And it's very important that as a person of color, because here's the bold truth. The panel are people that other cosplayers look up to. And their opinions matter, will be taken seriously, and may even be considered as the final answer and the end-all be-all. And it is very important on the topic of race that they understand what they are talking about. It is not enough to just simply say, well, you know, I think this and I think that. No, you need to educate. And if you don't, then not only does that raise more questions, but it can promote continuous problematic behavior within the cosplay community. One of the things that annoyed me, which, my opinion, I believe it's Brittany, who actually kind of saved this live stream by the end of it, because I was just like, oh my god, no, guys, no. Saved it end saying that that it needs to be expanded upon, but she'd also asked a question, and it was specifically about blackface. Now, I was raging all over Facebook, like, about this, because somebody had asked the question. And I will answer it again, because I always find it much easier to talk about something than it is to type out something that's so tiring, to continually repeat yourself. And not even sure if people even read your comments, but, you know. She had talked about blackface. Now, I guess I'll present her question first. My biggest problem with her question was, do you guys mind blackface? And that is the wrong question. It is the wrong question, and this is not, by the way, when I said, that's not a quote, but that's basically the gist of it. It was something along the lines of, do you mind, or what do you like, or are you okay with, something like that. But when you ask a question in that manner, you are asking for validation, not for discussion. And when you ask for validation, then especially since you're not dealing with, and became very clear really fast, with people who spend their time educating themselves about race. You get some very bad answers. And it got worse and worse. And I wish that it was Chris and Anna. I feel like Anna might know something, but she didn't talk or speak up. I'm not sure, but it looked like she knew something and wanted to say something, but was afraid to go against the opinion. Not sure. Not accusing her of anything, you know, don't think that. But yeah, so let's talk about blackface. Alright, so I'm going to make something very clear right now. You do not treat people's skin as a costume. And I've seen people try to attempt to make it look like a double standard. Like, you know, one of the comments on the Facebook page was, you dress up as Nightcrawler, that's okay. But if you dress up like Barrett from Final Fantasy, then that's bad. Yes, it is. And let's start out by saying that Nightcrawler, his skin is not his race. He's not a real person. He's fictional. His race is fictional. Everything that he is fictional. However, Barrett has an actual real life existing race. He's black. And you do not treat real life people's skin as a costume. Now, the historical context of blackface in the United States was blackface was used in minstrel. Recall everyone, I'm sure, knows who Mr. Popo is from Dragon Ball Z, and I love Mr. Popo no matter what. Please, so if anyone wants to try and call me oversensitive, I just can't get mad at Mr. Popo. But he is blackface. He's blackface. And that's one reason why they changed his skin to purple. Not sure if the writers or artist meant to make him actually blackface or was simply drawing off American inspirations and that came up, but Mr. Popo's blackface. And blackface was painted on white actors to mock and belittle and marginalize black people in the U.S. And that is the historical U.S. context of blackface. Also, blackface is not only U.S., it is also elsewhere. I believe, what is his name? There's a Dutch Christmas celebration in which people dress up as blackface. And it is called Black Peter, I believe. You can look it up, racist Dutch celebration or racist Christmas celebration, you will find it. And they dress up as blackface. And that is not U.S. So just letting you know, we're not only grounded here. But even without the U.S. context, treating people's skin as a costume piece commodifies their skin. It commodifies them, which in the same manner, which is why minstrel shows did that, because it othered, it changed the people they were mocking. Besides putting on these acts that mocked them, wearing someone else's skin, the fact that they painted in a crude way, othered African Americans, othered black people, and other people of color, because mind you, white America back then considered just about anyone who was not white a nigger. And you know, while it was particularly aimed at black people, it was aimed at anyone who was brown skinned. It didn't matter. So I guess I need to go more into this. Now, a couple of people on the panel said, no, as long as it's not mocking, it's fine. Well, let me tell you something. You don't. And intent doesn't matter. One of the things you will learn when studying things like feminism and race politics, intent does not matter. When you change it to intent, that means that people can perpetuate racial stereotypes so long as their intent is not to perpetuate it, and that makes no sense. It doesn't. And if you do not intend to be racist, but do a racist act, it is still racist. There is no get out of jail free card because you do not intend to offend somebody. Now, this does not mean that you yourself are a terrible person. And you only become a terrible person in my book when you, if I said, look, that's racist, you can't do this, this is why, and you go, no, I'm gonna do what I want, then you're a terrible, racist, shitty person. And another thing that I mentioned in my comments on Facebook, I'll post a link to the page. You can find me under the same name. I post a lot of comments, and I'm going to tell you, I got pretty angry and pretty frustrated because I've encountered these arguments so many times before, responded to these arguments, I've done my research, and a lot of the counter arguments to mine come from an ignorant place. This does not mean the people that I was talking to were stupid by any means. It does not mean that. But it meant that they did not understand what they were talking about. I'm trying to think of like a comparison to give you guys so that you can understand what I mean in terms of understanding race, because I'm pretty sure all of you sitting at home are probably like, you know, I know about race, you know. But unless you have spent the amount of time, spent any amount of time researching this and researching the questions, like if you don't know how to give a counter argument to any of this, then you haven't done your studying, or at least not enough, because this is some pretty basic stuff. Yeah, so that's the topic of blackface. I had said in the comments that when you put an emphasis, you know, like I understand, an Asari costume would not be complete if you were not blue. You know, like that's part of what the Asari are. However, I do not. Actually, no, this would be a good continuation to my other argument. But when you put such an emphasis on changing your skin as an intrinsic part of making a very good cosplay, you are actively excluding non-white and non-Asian cosplayers. And this is because when you say that skin is important in your cosplay, that means someone like me, and I'm not even that dark, like someone like me cannot cosplay, you know, Tifa from Final Fantasy. I mean, besides the kinky hair, I mean, I could wear a wig, but I can't cosplay. I mean, look, these are black features. I cannot cosplay Tifa. I cannot, like, painting my skin white will not do anything, you know. And right now I'm still in summer mode, but my Chinese comes in and I get really pale during the winter, and people still know I'm black. Like, it's on my face. Like, you can't do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, even if you do a really good job, like matching up the skin perfectly, you know, like perfect skin tone, swatch for swatch, I'll be impressed, you know. But you're still gonna look like a white dude, you know, with blackface on, no matter what. And this will also go into another argument talking about the use of prosthetics. Because I had that brought up in one of people I'm talking to, their counter argument, using prosthetics to also make it even more accurate. This goes back to point number 1. Commodities. My skin is not something that I wash off at night. It's not something that I take off when I feel like it. It's not something that, you know, I can just put foundation over or scrub with bar soap, and then all of a sudden I'm white and I get all the privileges that go along being with that. When you use my skin as a part of your costume, you are treating my skin as if it does not carry the socio-political burdens that are associated with my skin. And I know this might be a little advanced for some people who are not aware of things like privilege, but I encourage you all who do not know or cannot piece together what I'm saying to do your own research. Like, it is very important that you do your own research and you learn about things like sociology. This is in sociology. I'm not pulling this out of my ass, guys. Like, this is what it's about. And the whole, like, it's weird too, because a lot of the people that I talk to may not choose to be white passing, but could pass off as white, and those were the people of color who were okay with it. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, I know, because I've been in this boat, do not try to counter-argue me. I've been in your place. I'm black. And despite this, I have still said very ignorant and very racist things, as well as perpetuate racism. And racism today is very, very, in my opinion, much more malicious than it was 100 years ago. And this is because, you know, racism in modern America's minds is the person standing on the podium with the hood talking about hanging black people. And I know I bring up black people a lot. All people of color experience racism. But racism now, and it always has been, is very institutionalized. That is what racism is. And that is why reverse racism is not possible. It is an oxymoron. But race is very institutionalized, and it's an anomaly to see someone preaching on a podium, you know, talking about hanging black people, you know. But today, it is deeply rooted in our language and the mentalities that are perpetuated. We still have police brutality and racial profiling. You see it, you saw it. I'm sure you guys know about what happened when the new Miss America was Indian. Like, that was crazy. It was talked about on the panel. You know, it is very internalized and it's very structured within our system. And you can be racist and perpetuate racism without actively trying to. And you have to be conscious. It's called being consciously aware and being socially aware about the things you do and how it affects people and what you are promoting. And blackface is a part of that. And you can call it whatever you want to, because I know people might be sensitive calling blackface because it's like, it's not really blackface. I'm not trying to mock anyone. Well, using other people's skin as a costume, if you're going to call it for what it is, I'm like, it doesn't even sound right. Like, you don't do it. It's not important. And if it is that important, you might as well just say that, you know, I believe everyone should only cosplay as the race that they are. Or if they do cosplay, they have to change their skin. And that not only sets boundaries on skin color, it sets boundaries on a whole bunch of things. You know, like, if you're fat, you better lose weight because your cosplay is never going to be as perfect as mine. You know, and, you know, the panel talked about craftsmanship and how we should focus on that. And that's the thing. You know, when you make things like this okay, you know, and the best cosplay is always going to be the cosplay that paints their skin, you know, so they can be as close to cosplay, then we take away from craftsmanship. Then it no longer becomes about the craftsmanship. You know, I mean, I really don't care how good of a job you do. Don't wear other people's skin. You just don't. Like, it should be more about how you embody the character yourself. Like, your cosplay should be good enough to convince me that you are Yoruichi from Bleach. You know, like, I should not, like, that's another thing when you turn around, like, skin has to be a factor. It's like, no, like, that makes the character only their skin color as well. Like, you know, do you know what I'm saying? So is that, oh god. Okay, so that's not even the worst of it. The worst thing that was said, and that drove me up the wall. And it was even more painful because it was a black person who had said it. Forgive me if I mispronounce his name, but let me get to it so I can see. K. Hatton. Oh god. He said we should stop talking about race. I'm going to have to link to a lot of things in my comments, a lot of links that talk about race. And one of the biggest no-nos, and the reason why race is still around today is because people are ignoring it. People are trying to pretend that racism doesn't exist, that there is no privilege attributed to your race. No, 100 years is really not that long. Like, it's not. You can't just scrub out, you know, institutionalized racism that's meant to turn around and keep down a demographic of people with, like, a voting ballot. Like, it just doesn't happen like that, you know. And we definitely weren't that educated to turn around and be like people don't just go, you know, like, it is rooted in our system, and when you ignore and pretend like it doesn't exist, it allows it to continue to persist over the years. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, if you have like, it's actually a very good comparison. If you have a tumor, you know, you can't just ignore it. It's not going to go away because you're ignoring it. Do you know what I mean? Racism is something that will continue. It is located. It is not a state of mind in which someone is yelling epitaphs at a race of people. You know, it is also in the way we have structured ourselves. The way, you know, how over the years, you know, during race past, they have placed people of color at the bottom of the poverty line, and the poverty line has not changed. Forgive me, because my sociology might be a little bit rusty right now because I'm learning this like last semester. That the poverty line has not changed for, I think, like 60 years now or something. Forgive me, look this up on your own. I encourage everyone to do their own research right now, but I'm going on the fly here. But it basically is not changed in a really long time, and the majority of people in poverty are people of color, and our government is not set up to help those people of color. Schools are underfunded. Do you understand how racism persists? And this is really great because I had a class today which talked about race and how it is also internal. Racism, systematic, the whole point of race as a system is to make it internal. The people who are oppressed by this system it becomes internalized, and they themselves then begin to keep themselves down. If you guys have read Nathan McCall's Makes Me Wanna Holler book, that is a perfect example of this. And basically the thing is that Nathan McCall from a young age understands his position. He is a black man living in a white man's world, and that there are certain hierarchies in place based on this. But he adapts a self-destructive lifestyle because he could not articulate and could not understand how this was to be, and that it wasn't an inevitable fate so much as it was a system designed for him to go down the self-destructive path. And he did not realize this until he had gone to prison and was educated by black men who did understand the system, you know. And he went out and he changed life around. Now his is a story of success. This is not, now do not get me wrong, this is not a story of meritocracy. You know, he still encountered racism and still was being held down, but he kept pushing. And the whole thing with privilege is that you will not have to deal, when you have privilege, the high ones being race and sex, and actually I'll include straight privilege as well. You will not deal with the hardships that someone else will have to, based on your race, gender, or sexuality. Case in point, women still earn, I believe it is 62 cents to $1 that every man earns. Black women earn even less, but black men earn less than white women. Interesting, huh? So what does this all have to do with cosplay? Well, I talked about all this because it is important that we understand and that we're on the same ground when we're talking about race, and that you at least get a basic understanding so you can draw connections for yourself when we talk about race and cosplay, and bring it all around. And I guess I'm going to tie this in a nice neat bow. Race is a social construct. In the context of blackface, despite the historical connotations it has, dressing up and using someone else's skin, a real person's skin, as a costume, commodifies their skin. It marginalizes them. It ignores the problems that they have experienced based on their skin. It ignores the socio-political connections that their skin has, and it treats it like a costume and nothing more. And there's so much more that goes along with me being black. What else? Oh, also defending the use of someone else's skin as a costume puts a lot of emphasis on, less emphasis on the craftsmanship of the person making the costume and how well the person embodies their costume, and more on how well they can emulate the person wearing the costume, based solely on physicalities. And I know what it is, to see someone who looks exactly like the character, like, that's amazing. It's really cool. However, you can't marginalize or trivialize someone's skin in the manner as to use it as a costume. And cosplay, while it is cool to see someone who looks exactly like the character, that shouldn't be what it's about. The person who, the white person who painted their skin black to look like Barrett should not be given more praise than the black person trying to cosplay as Tifa or Yuna, or the smorgasbord of white characters that are offered to white people. Like, that's another thing, by the way. Like, there is no argument here. If you are white or white passing, you have this huge array and coming of people you can cosplay, and oh my God forbid you can't cosplay as Barrett. Well, welcome to the world of someone like me who turns around and goes like, gee, what do I want to cosplay as? And I don't really know this character, and I don't really like this character as much as I like this character, and the 60 cosplay that is available to me, like, I did Barrioth Girl because, like, she's not really a character so much as it is simply an armor piece on Monster Hunter. She's raceless. Like, there's really just, like, there's no reason for it. And then coming back around to what race is a cosplay, and what I assume is what the main point was, is that calling out people of color for not looking like their cosplay, and how when you put so much emphasis on the skin, you exclude those people. You exclude black people as well. Excuse me, not black people, people of color, and Asians, Asians who look like who are fair skinned, because Indians are Asian too, and they certainly will get flack because they do not look like their character. Magics of privilege, guys. That is in the work right here. This whole conversation. Oh, let's go over some terms right now real quick. We've got race, prejudice, and discrimination. Okay, I'm going to go into order. By the way, these are sociological terms. I'm not pulling them out of my ass. This is a standard definition based on sociology, and if you go on Webster's, it will turn around and tell you something different, but understand that Webster is not the final be-all, because Webster is just basically the generally accepted definition. And mind you that Webster's doesn't even have a lot of terms that you would find even in the sciences, like biological terms you probably won't find it on Webster's, math terms you won't find it on Webster's, so on and so forth. I'm about to tell you what racism is, basically. Okay, so let's go back again, backtrack. Prejudice is stereotypes you hold about people. All black people steal. Discrimination when you act upon that prejudice. So let's say I owned a store and I started following people around. I'm discriminating. Racism is privilege plus, good, that's not my middle finger, privilege plus power. And racism is the institutionalized discrimination, meaning even people who do not want to act upon that racism can still perpetuate racist things. I guess I'll link you to the quote itself, but in the quote, it was so great at explaining it, talked about how people in slavery society, even if they did not agree with slavery, they still needed the things that slave labor provided, and therefore they continued to help fund slavery, which was racist, despite actually wanting to fund slavery. Do you understand? Okay. And that is why reverse racism, aka racism against white people, does not exist, because racism against white people is non-existent. It's not institutionalized. White people can be discriminated against, by all means, yes. Black people, Asian people, Indian people, all of them can discriminate against white people. However, that discrimination is not institutionalized to the point where white people are handicapped or burdened by this discrimination. For instance, in the cosplay community, if a person of color was calling out a white person for doing blackface, and said, you can't cosplay as any black characters, that does not affect them, because they still have 6 million other white-looking or fair-skinned characters for them to cosplay as. It's not institutionalized. It is not going to affect them on such a scale as black people. Oh shoot. Let me touch on whitewashing real fast, by the way. I don't know, like, comments are pervasive. People will turn around, repeat things, and eventually believe it to be true. I'm sure you've heard some kind of quote like that. I don't know of any instance in which someone has accused a cosplayer cosplaying as a person of color and not using blackface as whitewashing the character. Like, you can't whitewash the character that way. It doesn't work. So if you decide to cosplay as Barrett, go right ahead. You are free to do that. Everyone's free to cosplay whoever they want. There's just one rule. Don't paint your face black. Don't paint your face yellow. Don't paint your face red. Don't paint your face brown. Blue. No. That would be incorrect, because blue is a fictional color and you can cosplay as a blue person. But you get the gist. Yeah, so don't worry about whitewashing. I don't know anyone who's ever said that. Like, someone said something like, I've seen it maybe once and that's it. But that was from, like, the lowest of trolls. Really, like, no one's going to turn around and tell you that you're whitewashing a character because you cosplayed as a person of color. Like, just don't do blackface. It's as simple as that. And that's pretty much it. Any questions, please address in the comments. I will post links in my video. Yeah. I'm going to try to address comments in the video. I actually really enjoy doing videos because it's much easier to talk than it is to type. It's really tiring. I post the Facebook page under the link. I'm going to remind you that if you look for my comments, they're going to get really like angry and frustrated because I'm basically repeating the exact same thing over and over again, and it is virtually unable to write 42 minutes worth of explaining so we're all on the same grounds. Like, it's just really frustrating, and I will be accused of many things, like being self-righteous and angry. No, I'm not angry. I'm frustrated and tired. This stuff comes up a lot. I've talked about this for about 3 years now. I've been talking about race and learning about race. And you could almost say it's a job that I don't get paid for. So I pretty much know what I'm talking about. Trust me on this. Do your own research, and I will leave it on that. Goodbye, everyone. This will probably be like a 2-part video, so bye.